Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Fuck J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number one in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
Hey! Bum, 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 bum. You know, every time I hear that theme song, it makes me think I gotta pop in Goonies 2. Goonies 2 was a favorite of mine back in the day. But man, you really had to know where to go. Confusing non-linear game. Speaking of non-linear games, today I sat down with Valis for the Famicom, which I picked up at MagFest. I sat down with both of those Famicom games, but I think Valis shocked me the most because I was expecting it to be a bit more linear when compared to the Genesis games, or at least compared to Valis 3 in the Genesis, because it's really the only one I'm familiar with at this point. It wasn't linear at all. It was very non-linear. It played a bit more, in terms of linearity, the side-scrolling played a bit more like Friday the 13th on the Nintendo. With the moving in and out of the environment. The music was top-notch. The gameplay got a little repetitive, but once I figured out how to explore and I found out that there was a map somewhere and you had to find it, I really enjoyed it. It's a good game. Those are just a couple of Famicom notes. I played that, and I played the Technos Japan hockey game. I still don't know what that's called, but I played 3 games of that, and by the third game, I like, the difficulty just shot through the roof. It started really easy. The second team was like a nice happy medium, and the third team was impossible. So that's been a fun game as well. All right, so man, I got sidetracked right out of the gate. Good stuff this week. I got some. I went out to chipmusic.org. I got some brand new chip tunes hot off the scene. You guys can get MP3s of these. As always, chipmusic.org. It's a great place. It's where most of the music for the show comes from. So there's that. I've also got we're gonna ask the internet some questions. Pretty much just going out and reading things on the internet. In addition to that, got some good van casting and an all-around good time. So this is going to be a really good one. Okay, boys and girls, let's kick things off with a tune from chipmusic.org. Okay, so this is called Motion Ride Sound of Snow. Again, chipmusic.org. Head over there, get yourself a copy of the MP3 if you dig it. You guys are listening to Tiger Claw Radio, number one in non-FCC compliant video game podcasting. Podcasting, P-O-R-D, podcasting. Okay, let's do this thing. The beeps and the boops, both at one time. All right, This van cast was sort of a weird one. It had just snowed, and it was amidst the most dangerous ride to work I can remember in recent years. Oh boy. Welcome to the van cast. I consider this my black box recording because I'm driving to work in the snow. Bear with me, I'll turn that blower down here in just a minute. I'm pulling out right now of my street. I want to make sure I do so safely. This is prime conditions to have a car accident. Alright, let's see. Drop that in gear, make sure I'm up. Drop the blower down just a little bit, not too much. Check my stopping distance. Alright, I think I'm good. I think we can survive out on the road today. And off to work I go. Wednesday morning, I had Monday off for ML King Day, and then Tuesday I got to telework, which was really nice. So this is it. This is me starting my work week at the office. Felt good to get a couple days off. Alright, you guys ready to talk some video games? So look at that. It's just taking forever to stop. Alright, hang on. Passing a snowplow right now. Okay, there we go. Video games, right. So there was a big update to Street Fighter V. Got that installed, and I got to boot it up and give it a try this morning. It took so long to get in after the update. It was like a 13 gigabyte download for one thing. Once I got that hooked up, I did that all day yesterday, or not all day, but I spent time getting it done yesterday so I could play this morning. And when I fired it up this morning, it wanted to authenticate my joystick again. It wanted to, now let's restart. Now you gotta authenticate it again. It took a long time to get in. When I finally got in, it was cool to see some of the new stuff they added. They added a new cinematic opening, which is something Street Fighter V had kind of been missing. I don't like the new interface very much. I thought the old map over blue UI was attractive, and I am sorry to see it go. But you know, that's life. They make changes. That's Capcom. That's what they do. They added another season of characters, insanely expensive DLC. Sakura, I believe, who's the star of the show and easily the most anticipated character. She's available in a demo form. Like, I can play her now and for the next couple of days. Oh boy, I don't like this. I don't. The roads are too snowy. I don't feel like this is very safe, but you know, I'll do what you got to do. So that's cool. I just kind of got to nose around again. I didn't really get to play with it too much. But Street Fighter V is still a good game. I'm excited for the new content that they've added and are adding. There is now a mode on the title screen, or on the main the main selection for arcade mode, and there wasn't before. You had to go to like versus or something, and then in versus there was a sub section that said arcade. They took that out and put it front and center, which I thought was about time. Come on, arcade mode is a main feature of a fighting game. This was the biggest complaint when Street Fighter V dropped, is that it dropped with no arcade mode. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just give us a line of CPU controlled fighters that we can practice against. And now we have that. It seems like there's oh, hang on. Oh jeez. I'm sliding all around. This is so dangerous. I'm going to keep the van cast going all morning while I drive to work, because the roads are very snowy and slick, and I'm honestly, true blue, I'm scared to death that I'm going to get in an accident. So I'll tell you what, I think this is probably the best way to keep calm. Let's just keep this going. And that way, if anything happens, you'll be able to enjoy the final moments of my life out there in internet land. The things I do to put the food on the table for my family. Alright. I think we're stable again. Oh boy. Alright, we'll just take this nice and slow. What was I saying? Yeah, Street Fighter V. You know, I mean, there's a lot of new content. There's some new characters. There's a new season pass. But when it boils down to it, I don't have a whole lot of new things to say about it right now. I gotta go play with it. We'll see how the new characters throw off the balance. We'll see how they affect net play, all that stuff. I'll report back to you later. I'm pretty sure everybody listening has gotten tired of Street Fighter V at this point. But I still enjoy playing it, so what are you gonna do? Now let's talk about Raiden. Raiden 4, which I spent a lot of time playing as of recently. What a good game Raiden 4 is. I was really anticipating getting Raiden 5. I paid $20 for it in the sale, a little over $20. Raiden 4 is a better game. It really is. This is a no contest, Raiden 4 is better type scenario. Not to say Raiden 5 is a bad game. Alright, let's talk about some Rudy Tooty point and shooty. High score battle. Alex Swingle claims is saying that he's got the throne score of Raiden 4, though he won't divulge how much he's actually gotten. He is currently at the high scoreboard of 0 points. Though when he unveils that screenshot showing off his high score, I'm sure it'll be devastating, as it usually is with Alex Swingle. I made it to 6 million after a lot of practicing. It took me a lot of practicing to get out of that first stage without using a bomb or losing a life, but I can do that now. And 6 million right now is my top score, something I'm really proud of. And I'm the more I play, I can see the score steadily increasing, which is great. One thing that Raiden 4 does very, very well is when you play the arcade mode, the localized arcade mode, not the world ranking mode, it does a great job of the way it keeps scores, because all your scores are dated based off of the system clock, which is a really nice touch. So I can see when I first bought that game and installed it, the first thing I did was a 1 credit run. It was like sometime last year. So I can look at the high scoreboard, and before I started playing, I could see that one game registered and then nothing. And ironically, I did really well that time. I can't remember offhand exactly what the score was, but it was up there. So that's it. I'm training to beat Alex Swingle right now. Saga asked about this in the comments. We'll talk about that later in the fail bag. But right now it's a 3-way banger between me, Swingle, and Saga for Raiden Supremacy. And that's been wonderful. What a great game it is. It really is. It's very, very good. Hang on, drive time. Woo! Slipping and sliding all around. Oh my gosh. I very well could die this morning. Oh my gosh. If I die out here on the road, who's going to post this awesome podcast? Officers who have found my dead body, please post this and make it available to the Tiger Claw Radio Podomatic account. Oh gosh. Actually, it seems to be not so bad here. Whoop. Now we're getting icy. Oh man. Icy? No guardrail on the right hand side, and then just off the road the ground drops drastically. I can't think of a better combination for death out on the road, unless it just happened to be drunk driving day. And I was caught in the middle of it. That might be worse. Alright. Oh, golly. Okay, so here we go. So I was talking about Raiden 4. I played that a whole bunch, and then I went back to Raiden 3 and did like just a couple of milk runs. I know I'm not going to get anywhere on the Raiden 3 scoreboard. I think Swingo pretty much has that on lockdown. But I ran it a couple times anyway. Swingo, please do me a favor. I want to get our scoreboard for Raiden 3 now that we've moved on from that game. I want to get it written down, and I want to get it posted somewhere in a single place so that we can refer back to it later. I know the scoreboard between the three of us was you on top, then Dumaze, and then me. But I need to know exactly what those points are. So if you would be so kind as to look them up again and drop them in the comments, that would help me a lot. Or slide me a DM or something. Alright, so we did Raiden, we did Street Fighter 5. What else is going on? Speaking of Street Fighter, I was told, I heard a rumor that there's a package coming on Steam that's going to have some of the old Street Fighter Alpha type games involved, purchasable again, where you can play them online and stuff. That'd be great. Street Fighter Alpha 3 online on Steam. That's what I want. Actually, I would say what I want is to get Street Fighter Alpha 3 online on Steam with cross-platform play like Street Fighter 5 has. Nothing's more satisfying to me than going head-to-head with somebody, my side having the little PC logo, their side having the little PS4 logo, and just pounding the snot out of them. That's very satisfying to me. Capcom has done their bid to stoke the fires of the console wars. Good times. Oh boy, what else is going on? I think that might be all the video games I've played lately. I sat down with Ghouls and Ghosts on the Sega Genesis, and I played that a bunch a little while ago. I like that game. Well, let me say this. I'm not a big fan of the Ghouls, Ghosts, Goblins games. I think a lot of the difficulty comes from poor design choices. I think they could have tweaked it a little bit and made it simpler to play and yet still retain a lot of the difficulty. I think the ease of death in that first level, I don't know, man. I find that hard to get down with. But nonetheless, I mean, those games are what they are. They've been around a long time. You take them or you leave them. Ghouls and Ghosts, the one for the Sega Genesis. Played that a little bit. Got to a point where I can knock out that first level pretty much without breaking a sweat. And then you get to the second level and there's like bouncing turtle shells. And it's very bizarre. Very weird. But still very cool. It retains its cool factor, which is awesome. I feel like that would be... Oh, hang on, let me slow up. Icy, thin, curvy roads. I feel like that would be a cool game to do, maybe like a Let's Play or something of. Alright, hang on. Drive time now. Oh, jeez. I ordered a PlayStation game. I haven't ordered anything in like a month. The last game I ordered was I think Tekken 5 or Tekken 4 or whatever the Tekken game was that I got a refund for because they didn't send it. But I ordered a game called Black Dawn, which was a PS1 helicopter game that I remember liking very much many years ago. Plays a lot like the Strike series, the later games in the Strike series, Nuclear Strike and Soviet Strike, from what I remember. But I will have to see when that gets here. Really excited about that. I used to have these demo discs for PlayStation when I was a kid. I guess you'd see like a list of thumbnails for games that were up and coming. This was common. And then among the thumbnails, most of them would be like preview videos, and then there would be like 2 or 3 that you could select, which were playable games, playable demos. And people would have these types of demo discs, when they didn't even have any games yet. I remember that. Let's go to my house and play PlayStation. What games you got? I got this demo disc. It's got all the games on it. And then you just play demos on PlayStation, and that's what you had. One of those discs had Black Dawn on it. This demo disc that had Black Dawn, Disruptor. Those were the 2 big ones I remember from a demo disc. It also had, I think it was Chronicles of the Sword, which was this weird point-and-click type game for the PlayStation 1. But it was listed as a playable demo, but when you played it, it played in FMV, and that was it. So not really playable. Demo discs were for the PlayStation were definitely like a thing of the past. That's something that you're not going to find on PSN, where you get on PSN and get yourself a copy of an old demo disc. I have not ever pursued getting old demo discs again. But in this whoa, shit. Oh boy, sorry for the bad language. I definitely just took a left turn in my car. Front wheels turned left, back wheels kept going straight. Oh boy. And you know what kills me? As crappy as these conditions are driving to work, when I get there, and do my day and I'm ready to come home, all this is going to be gone. It's going to be nothing but sunshine and nice, easy driving, and it'll be great. Or what's worse, I'm going to get there and everyone else who I work with is going to have called in and be like, well, I'm not driving in those crazy conditions. Are you out of your mind? And then I'll have to work it out by myself. But that's all right. We will summon the resolve to get through it, because that's what we do. Oh boy. What a morning. What a morning to be on Weight Watchers. You know what would comfort me through this icy, dangerous morning is just one-handing the wheel with a great big cheeseburger in the other hand. That'd make it better. Then I wouldn't care if I crashed and burned. Alright. How far in are we? I can't even tell because I have a lock on my phone. And I'm too afraid to look to undo the lock. There's a red light up here in a minute. I should be able to check then, and we'll see. Alright. Onward we go. Anything else going awesome in the world of video games? I'm still waiting for my copy of Battlemania 2 for the Sega Genesis to come from AliExpress. I ordered that back in November and it hasn't showed up yet, so I don't know what the deal is. That one might not be coming. I know AliExpress offers a refund if something doesn't come in like 60 days. Might actually be getting a refund on that one. We'll see. Oh man, I think I can drop this down a little bit now. There we go. I think it's bearable conditions now. On top of all this, I'm tired as well. I want to get a big cup of coffee. I want to get a cup of coffee. I want to sit in my room and I want to play some video games. That's what I want to do. Don't want to be out here in the ice and the snow. Nope. Don't want that. Nope. I don't want that. It's going to be my slogan for the day. Alright, guys. Oh, jeez. Alright. Considering this is me just being terrified into my phone, I think I'm going to call that it, reluctantly. Just 19 minutes and 32 seconds. You know what's funny? Last week, I named the episode Video Game Death March. If there ever was one, this is a video game death march. We'll see. I'll have to name this one something similar. Oh boy. All right. I'll see you back in the studios. With any luck, I'll see you back there safe and sound and out of the snow with some hot coffee in my hand. And right now there's nowhere I'd rather be. I'll see you guys there, you lucky dogs. I did make it to work just fine, and now I am back safe and sound in the studio. And again, there's nowhere I'd rather be. Not drinking hot coffee though. Right now I got black cherry seltzer water out of a can. I've been on Weight Watchers since New Year's. I got on Weight Watchers to try and trim the old waist down, try and stay at least a little healthy. I've lost 6 pounds, which is not bad. I don't think you can see it. Personally, I see it myself, but it's one of those where if I put a before and after picture, they'd look the same. But here I am with seltzer instead of a Coke, which is, what I'd like to be drinking. All right, I got I have another piece of van casting for you, and I got some more fun. But first, just a quick reminder, this is a Patreon-sponsored show, so I'd like to tip my hat to the guys who are keeping things alive, especially this past month. As we rode through the holidays, and I had a couple of kind of tight-waisted trim shows. So thanks so much to Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, Six Health of Fury, and the Cartridge Brothers. You guys have been immeasurably patient, and I am super, super grateful. So as I return second week into the old formula, I hope you guys are digging it. Thanks so much. And I've got, let's see, how do I want to do this? How long is the second Vancast? I think that was the longest. The second one is 16 minutes. So we're gonna do Vancast number 2, then we're gonna play Ask the Internet, and then I've got a trim fail bag that we can go over, and that should be a show. But first, here is a quick chiptune from chipmusic.org. This is Local Wolfman, Archived Songs number 2, Nitro Pulse. You know what? It's a little bare bones. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's a little bare bones, a little bleepy. But it's only 50 seconds long. So this is a nice little sample loop that I don't know. I dig it. I feel like I can feel the struggle in this track, but maybe that's just me. See what you think. Alright, boys and girls, you're listening to Tiger Claw Radio episode 218. Thanks so much for spending your time with us. Let's go back to the van. Oh my goodness. What day is it? It's Thursday morning. Jeez, blintzes. It's freezing cold out. It's freezing. My phone says it's 16 degrees outside, but it feels colder than that. Alright, let's see if we can safely pull out of the driveway. I don't know, just park in the driveway. Pull out of my spot in front of the house on the street. Okay, alright. It's cold. It's very cold. But I think I can talk some video games this morning. Oh man, I just did like the windshield washer fluid, and it made it so much worse. The wipers smeared it all over, and then it started to freeze in place. All right, hang on. I gotta stop the car and put something get some kind of blower on the windshield. There we go. It's not perfect. I hate talking over the blower, but I think we can make it work. So I was watching some YouTube last night, and I was watching Ball and Nick. I can't even remember the numbers, but it's one of those where it's like 179 or something like that. a name and then a number, like somebody left over from the America Online days when you would pick a name that was taken by somebody else and they would recommend a screen name with like 5 digits after it. Well, you want to make your name Adidas? Well, we've already got a user with that name. How about Adidas 38721? All right. So I was watching Ball and Nick, and he was talking about his video games. And it seems like old Nick has sold off a lot of his collection. And is rather than building a big collection, he's more about playing right now, which I gotta say I respect. But then going through his back catalog of vlogs for the past year, he was really into reproduction carts as well. But rather than getting cheap one-off Sega repros, oh, excuse me, he was collecting these multi-carts. Like, I spend $40 on a single Super Nintendo cartridge that has like 10 RPGs on it. And I was watching these videos he made, and he got a few like that. Like, he held up 2 carts, and I was like, I spent $100 on these 2 carts, and they had like a ton of games a piece. I'm like, the multi-carts look cool, but I really feel like you reach a point where you should just get an EverDrive. You know what I mean? If you're gonna spend $100 on several multi-carts, you're better off getting an EverDrive. I like the multi-carts. I like the fact that somebody else is flashing the ROMs for you. You don't have to deal with ROM sites. I like that. That's a little bit high for a multi-cart for me. Like, I was looking at multi-carts for the NES a while back, just to see what was there. And because if you want to get, there's certain games, if you want to get them on the NES, you're either going to shell out tons and tons of cash, or you're going to play it by some alternate means. And you guys know the games I'm talking about, the big money games, like, I don't know, Nintendo World Championships. For me, it's Metal Storm. That's a game I want to own. And I looked at a multi-cart for the Mega Man games. That's a very common multi-cart they sell. It's like 6 Mega Man games, 1 through 6 in a single cart for like $30 or something. Same as a Raspberry Pi, but it's an actual cart you can slide into your loose cart collection. And it'll run on the OG hardware. But see, but in that case, you've got a product that undercuts an EverDrive. That's one cart, about, a third or so of the cost of an EverDrive. And if you're going to play through all those Mega Man games and really get some use out of it, I think, I wouldn't say it's a deal, like something you got to jump on, but it's a viable option. I don't know. Just thinking, I would say. Let's see. I had this moment this morning when I was getting ready to leave the house where I had I got a bag that I bring to work every day. It's like a big grocery bag, and in it I usually keep my lunch and then like a couple other things, like a sweater if I need it, a little of this, little of that. And that bag was sitting on the floor in my office, and I went to pick it up, and it was in the spot it was in, on the carpet. It was surrounded by loose Genesis carts. So I reached down to pick up this bag, and I saw the Genesis carts, and now I'm sitting there holding this bag, going back and forth, looking at the bag, then looking at the Genesis games, then looking back at the bag and Genesis games. I was like, oh man, that was a rough one. That was a rough moment, knowing I was getting ready to walk out, leaving all those games there. There's a thing I like to say at the end of every podcast where I talk about keep doing what you got to do. And the reason I say that is because there are these moments where you know what it is you have to do. And maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it's something much simpler than that. Maybe it's just getting out of bed in the morning. You know what you've got to do. And there are times where it's just the hardest thing in the world. And that was this morning, picking up that bag surrounded by Genesis cartridges. So here I am now, whatever it is, 16 degrees, driving to work through the woods. At least, if I could put a positive spin on things, at least I feel like the road is solid. Yesterday it was like slipping all around. It was really frightening. Now I'm just tired and cold. Want to go back to bed, want to play some video games. That's another thing. All those Genesis carts surrounding the bag, if I actually called out, I wouldn't put the Genesis games in and start playing. I'd probably go back to bed. It's really a moot point. Just knowing the comforts of home are there and not being able to enjoy them. But it can't be all bad, right? I got a job to go to. I think it's Larry Miller who, at the end of every podcast of his, he says, if you've got a job to come home from, a home to go home to, and someone who loves you who's there, then the race is over and you've already won. Truer words have never been spoken. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be thinking about video games all day. I got a budget of, I want to order something. And I want to set up my camera and do some more vlogs back at the house. I think that'd be fun. I've been hankering to get my Atari up and running for weeks now. Ever since MagFest, I think. When I was at MagFest, there was a big bucket of Atari games, and I pulled out the 3 that I made the video about. I wished I had got more, because there were more viable options there. I wished I'd got more, because that was one instance where I could have saved money by buying at the con. Because Atari games, I mean, I've said this before many times on the air, the value of an Atari game is less than the cost of shipping an Atari game. So, I mean, average price, if you're gonna go buy a choice title, like not a choice title, but like a common title on the internet, you're gonna pay about $5. A couple dollars for the cart, a couple dollars for shipping, $5. So here we had some for $3. I would say that's a markup on the cart. I think they're usually like $2 a cart. A markup on the cart, but without shipping, you're still saving money. I should have bought more while I was there. But on the other hand, my Atari hasn't been hooked up in years. It's been years. So I probably made the right move. I'm not even sure what games I have in my collection. That's what kills me. It's been so long since I played my Atari. I went to MagFest, bought some games, brought them home, put them back on the shelf in my office, saying, oh, okay, I'll put these back in my collection soon. A year went by, those games were still there. I went back to MagFest, bought more games, brought them back, put them on the same shelf, thinking, all right, now I got these stack of games, I'll put this in my collection soon enough. And now I'm like, let's get this thing hooked up. I was looking around my room yesterday trying to find a place where I would put it, and I haven't come up with anything just yet. Trying to find a place to put the Atari, don't have one. Looking around in the market for an Atari paddle controller, don't have one of those either. But that's my mountain to climb. That's something I did on my YouTube channel in the last couple months. I drew up a sheet of paper with the goals. You guys remember that? That helped a lot in determining what to go after and keeping me focused. I think it's time to write another sheet of goals, and I think they might be Atari based, I don't know. I was kind of thinking my next goals would be PS1 based. Like I was thinking more along the lines of Dragon Warrior 7, Suikoden 1, and then maybe something else attainable. I don't know. But maybe they'll be Atari based. What would my Atari goals be? I want to get Spy Hunter for the Atari, but I know it costs. And I want to get Bump and Jump for the Atari, but I know that also costs. And then Double Dragon. I would say those are the 3 games. Spy Hunter, Double Dragon, Bump and Jump. That's not usually how I buy Atari games, though. I tend to just look what's out there, see if it looks cool, and if I don't have it, then let's make it happen. So those 3 games, you're looking at like $30 a game. That's a lot for an Atari game. You gotta really like Atari to pay $30 for an Atari game. Oh, I think a paddle controller retails at about half that. And I haven't pulled the trigger on a paddle controller, and it's been years. So that's it. I want to order some new stuff. I know that my YouTube channel, it doesn't, I can't support running a channel just on unboxings, because I can't order 2 things a week to unbox. 2 unboxings a week plus a podcast. That's too much money for ordering things. Seems like a silly idea to run a channel on, but it worked for a while. It breathed new life into Tiger Claw TV. That was a great time, sitting there with a clipboard and opening Star Ocean 2. That Star Ocean 2 video, man, I don't know. That was a great moment for me. That was a game that, like, I kind of put in that realm of, my friends own this, it's expensive, I'll never own it. It was cool to get that for myself. Where are we at? So I'm going to do some looking around after work today. I'll zero in on something. I know I've got Black Dawn coming. That should be awesome when that shows up. I got some things on my peripheral list I've wanted. Apart from the paddle controller, I need some Game Gear, or not Game Gear, although that would be cool too. I need some GameCube stuff. I could use a GameCube memory card and controller and stuff like that. Another thing I wouldn't mind having a Wii, a second Wii that I can hack, because my family kind of doesn't want me to soft mod the Wii that I have right now, because it was the one we got new, and it's like hooked up to the family TV and whatnot. But I watched a video from, I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember his name, but it was one of Jerry Terrifying's friends. How he had a soft modded Wii that he got for $8, and he hooked up a 1 terabyte hard drive, and he was like, yeah, check it out. This is where it's at, bro. There's nothing easier to mod than soft modding a Wii. I wouldn't mind doing that, but I don't know. There's a million things in the video game world to get that would be awesome, but you got to center around what would be fun to play. So what would I actually play right now? Well, I played a bunch of Phantasy Star 1, which is a great game, so maybe it's time to play Phantasy Star 2. That's the game I have already, so I wouldn't make any purchases based on that. I think I'm finally starting to move on from Friday the 13th on the computer. That was my go-to game for a couple weeks. What are we at now? Let's see, 15 minutes? I guess we'll call that it. I had some other stuff to go over. I was thinking, went back over MagFest that I was at my buddy's house before we left for the con, and he got a Raspberry Pi hooked up, a Raspberry Pi 3, so it was newer than the one I used to have. And his was all tricked out. He took his time building his ROM collection, rather than what I did, which was just, okay, let's download the NES library and just stick it on there, get it running. He had a carefully curated collection, but in that collection was Sega CD games, which is what blew my mind. I don't have much experience with Sega CD games. And he was like, yeah, bro, they're readily available. So that's an exploration that I've never done that I would like to get into. So I think I'll put that on my to-do list and I'll report back later. In the meantime, you lucky dogs, you guys are going back to the Panzer Studio, where you can be surrounded by the comforts of home. You lucky dogs. But I wouldn't give to be back there right now. See you there. And here we are, safe, sound, and warm in Panzer Studios. You know, those van casts, I can feel them in the morning. You can hear it in my voice. As time goes on, week after week, there's more of a, oh gosh, I'm going to work, it's so early and cold. Oh boy. All right. So before we do the Ask the Internet bit, I just wanted to talk about this high score challenge that's floating out there right now for Raiden 4. Raiden 4 Overkill. So I played this a little bit in world ranked mode, and I'm at the third stage is as far as I can get. Now I look at my friends list. Leaderboard rankings, and I can see exactly where I stand. So right now I've got participation from myself, Alex Swingle, and Enji Varatsu. And right now I'm in third place out of 3, coming in at about 6.2 million. I don't remember how many Alex got, but he's in second place with around 8 million. And number 1 we have Enji Varatsu with around 11 million. Excuse me. Now, what I find interesting is all 3 of these scores, it'll show you how far you got. We've all gotten to the third stage and no further. NG made it to the boss of the third stage, and I know this because I sat down with my children present, and we watched his replay together to see what he did differently, because he got many more million points than I did, and he played the same levels and got a little bit further, but not that much further. You know, not 5 million points further. So that was fun. Congratulations to NG for taking the crown for this week. But this is not over. This is clearly a king of the hill type scenario. I may not catch you, but Alex Swingle might, because he took the crown for Raiden 3 in a big way. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's still up in the air. It's still anybody's game. And it always is. Raiden 3 is still up in the air as well. You think you can dethrone Alex Swingle? Pick up Raiden 3. Get it reinstalled. It was $1.25 over the last sale. This is some top-tier shmup action. Now, the arcade stick that I picked up at MagFest, it's still put away until my birthday. But in order to compete, hear that? Hear that? That's the sound of a Kenbach Q1. Oh, yeah. No better way to play a competitive shmup, in my opinion, than a nice, solid arcade stick. Alright, let's see what we got. It's time for Ask the Internet. The first question on Rights is, why did the mech genre die out? Wow, I don't want to answer for that, but you're right. It has been a while since we've seen good mech games. Right? We had the Armored Core series. The last mech game I played was that crazy original Xbox game with the gigantic setup that costs like $1,000 if you want to get it at home. It's got the two great big sticks and then the 3 pedals on the ground. I don't know why we don't see mech games like that anymore. The mech games that stick out to me are the smaller ones. I think Robo Pit is my favorite mech game ever. It was on the PS1. But, I don't have an answer as to why they died out, but I can tell you that I would love to see mech games make a comeback. I think it might... See, mechs always make me think of, 1980s anime. And I wonder if... I wonder if it's not really in the demo that unfortunately, a lot of the big game developers are trying to sell to. Here's one for you. Anon writes, the frustration of alternate endings that can only be accessed using a cheat code. First response, when did that ever happen? Alright guys, I can think of one instance right off the bat. How about the original Legend of Zelda? There was an alternate quest. You could get it 2 ways. You had to beat the game all the way through, or you could create a save file with the name Zelda. And then on the save feature, on the save screen, you'd be holding a big sword. Bada boom, bada bing. Alternate game mode using a cheat code. That's one. Here's a response that makes me stroke the old beard. There's a lot of games with now do it without cheating endings, I suppose. Demon's Crest has an alternate final boss and an ending that's only accessible through a password. That is crazy. Only accessible through a password. Yeah, do it without cheating is a common one. I can think of what was that FPS that Insomniac Games launched with for the PS1? Disruptor. Disruptor is an old favorite of mine. There were codes, there were little button combinations you could do to cheat in that game as well. And it changed a text string at the very, very end to something of that nature. It was like, do it without cheating, or you're not a true warrior unless you can, beat it without cheating, and what have you. Anon writes, what are your favorite ads and commercials for games? I think the most iconic television commercial for a video game that I can think of would be the original TV spot for Smash Brothers Brawl. And understandably, that's one that people see a lot. My favorite television commercial that I discovered after the fact was a commercial for the Atari 5200. I posted this on my blog before, but it's the Nobody's Hotter Than Atari This Summer ad, where a couple of chicks in 1980s high-hip bikinis roll down to the beach, and they're those dudes with the, typical 1980s movies with the great big bright-colored sunglasses. They take this great big Atari and they plug it into the sand and they play Atari in the stratosphere. It's my favorite video game commercial that perfectly encapsulates the 1980s. Here's one that I think might ruffle some feathers. No nostalgia for the Atari 2600 era games for a reason. These games weren't complicated, and most were kind of terrible. Imagine if you paid $50 in 1980s money for a piece of junk like this. One of the big reasons the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision or the Odyssey 2, which I owned, do not get any nostalgia play beyond maybe the sprites themselves is the lack of music. Music was one of the key defining moments in the NES, and the 2600 just wasn't up to snuff for this. So to all the people wondering why there's no heavy discussion of this era, that's why. All right, a couple of things. You're wrong that there's no discussion about the Atari 2600. Let's set apart my own presence here, because I realize that I personally touch on the Atari quite a bit. The Atari has a following, dude. They just tend to stick to Atari age. I mean, there are collections of Atari games that you can buy for some of the more modern, I wouldn't say modern, but like mid-tier, I don't know what generation you call them. GBA's got a couple. I got one for the PS1 that I enjoy very much. I know the PS2 has one as well. These collections of old Atari games, you get them and play them on your PS2. There's nostalgia for those. But there's one point you touched on where I think you might be onto something. It's the music. Music is very important. The whole sound audio cue, taking that to the next level. Super important in games, and I got two examples of this. Number one, the creator of who was it who said this? It had to do with the creation of Mega Man, but I don't think this was Kenji Inafune. That music was a key part of that game. Like, they knew from the very, very beginning that they had to put time into the music and making it sound right. That's one example. I mean, and look how that game, that series rather, because not the first game, but how that series kind of left its mark on history. So there's that. And when I think back on MS-DOS gaming, now MS-DOS in its early days wasn't much better than the Atari 2600 in terms of sound, with a few notable exceptions. You know, in the PC speaker days, one thing that sticks out in my head very, very much was the title sequence from Space Quest. I'd considered downloading that soundbite and dubbing it in here, but I know not everybody can get down with the PC speaker. So you're going to have to trust me, it was something that really stuck in my head. I'm curious to see what some of the other people were saying in response to this. No one at the time had this problem. Wait. Yeah, it's easier to have a connection with a game that's telling you a story than a game that's just about getting a high score. No story and graphics wouldn't let you submerge yourself into a game. Oh, I'm going to call shenanigans on that one, sir. Case in point, Missile Command. Missile Command was a Cold War era game. Okay? Most primitive of graphics. People had nightmares. Chronic nightmares when they would play Missile Command. Because it was a game that came out when the world was afraid of thermonuclear war. And in Missile Command, no matter how good you do, no matter how many missiles you can deflect, ultimately, eventually the game will end in total thermonuclear destruction. People had nightmares over this. This is a game that really upset human beings in their core. Could you imagine going to sleep, tucking yourself under the blanket, and just not being able to close those eyes because of that Atari 20? Listen, if we ever get nuked, I just hope the last thing I see is that Atari 2600. Alright, here's one that rustles my jimmies a little bit. We see the LJN rainbow. LJN, let's just not. You get it? Because LJN, let's just not. How can you say that? This really makes me upset. Because I don't remember anybody really saying this about the LJN rainbow until the Angry Video Game Nerd did his video. Now, let's be fair. A lot of those games were bad, but they weren't all bad. LJN made some, halfway decent games. The wrestling games were okay from LJN. All right? I think this is an example of James Rolfe, that piece of entertainment, rewriting history. I think this person, and I would imagine a lot of the people responding to this talking about how bad the LJN games were, have not played the LJN catalog. There we go. The very first, the very first reply for WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Genesis is, "Hey, I liked it." That's right, man. Look, if you want to bash something, I've made this mistake too in the past, so I'm sympathetic. If you want to bash something, do the best you can to make sure you've tried it, or at least admit, at least admit that you're proceeding without all the information. There you go. Which one would you rather? Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo, Super Mario Kart on the Nintendo 64? Look, I don't like to get down with these heavy Mario hypotheticals. Just not that much in a Nintendo anymore, but for me it was always Super Mario on the SNES. Furthermore, I know I'm always alone on that one. Everybody prefers the 64 on. I think the gap between those two games was rather large as well. I seem to remember the Super Nintendo game being the only Mario Kart game for quite a while. And nowadays it seems like nobody really remembers it. Everybody thinks about the Super Mario Kart for the 64. Tell you what though, I've never played it with... I've never played Super Mario Kart where I had to worry about a blue shell. I'll say that much. I'll take Super Indy Karts. As pretentious as that sounds. Alright, here we go. Anon writes, favorite retro girl? I've got too many. Rumi, Chun-Li, Cammy, Mai. I gotta tell you, my favorite was the 1996 Tomb Raider. That's another one, right? You look at those Tomb Raider games from the 90s, and it's kind of hard to imagine, but that was huge, man. I had Lara Croft, the promotional images of Lara Croft taped to the back of my hall pass book in middle school. Those games, they really left an imprint on me. I enjoyed everything about those first few Tomb Raider games very, very much. I think the fighting characters, I didn't really start to get down with those until a couple years later when we came across Mugen. Once my friend figured out Mugen, which we had the MS-DOS version at that point, it was game on. But everything before that, Lara Croft. Here's one I see a lot. Anon writes, I don't seem to enjoy video games anymore. Playing them feels like a chore. Have you felt this way before? Has any game in particular made you recover the enjoyment of video games? Alright, this is a really good question, and I think it really goes to... it raises some solid issues when it comes to mental health. Put some distance between you and video games, bro. I'm not saying put them away forever. I'm not even saying they're bad for you. I'm just saying I think you're reaching a point where you're doing the video games habitually, as opposed to, I enjoy these, I'm going to pursue enjoyment. This would be, if I were you in this moment, I would dip into my 1960s sci-fi novels that I haven't read, that have been hanging around for a while. I would dip into those, and I'd do some reading. I would do some other things. If you really feel like you don't enjoy playing video games anymore, maybe you don't enjoy playing video games anymore, and it can come back with time. So don't despair. There's not necessarily anything wrong with you. Just, branch out a little bit. Trust yourself. Trust that instinct. There's nothing wrong. You're fine. Here's one. Anon asks, what's the best place to get repros? And we see accompanied with that post is a picture of a very ornate looking Earthbound Zero. It looks great. The whole cartridge, the plastic, it's red. It's got emblems cut into the plastic. It looks great. And I would say, just don't bother. If you want to get repros, get them from AliExpress. Once they show up in the mail, just rip those labels right off. Get into printing your own custom labels separately from getting reproduction cards printed. You're going to get a better looking cart, and it's going to be cheaper. Okay? AliExpress. I know it's a crapshoot. I've had a million problems with AliExpress, but it's still better than any other way I've seen as of yet to get reproduction carts. Case closed. Anon writes, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Is it a sports game or a puzzle game? Look, I know you don't like sports games. Boxing is a sport. This is a sports game. Even if you have to use puzzle-like elements to be successful in it, a good case in point would be Hardball 3 for the Sega Genesis, or Great Baseball for the Sega Master System. Those are sports games, but what it really comes out to is carefully choosing the right pitch, and as the batter, carefully choosing the right way to swing. And then it eventually becomes paper, rock, scissors, so you could call that a puzzle game too, but it's not. You're playing baseball. It's a sports game. Such is the case with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Look, it's okay. It's a sports game. You know, it doesn't mean it has to be the same as John Madden, right? John Madden football. I mean, that's the reason why we remember Punch-Out! So fondly. It stuck out, right? It was good design, and it was like nothing else. But it's still a sport. Okay, finally, Anon writes, Dark Souls 3, why does this game even exist? I'm glad you asked that. Here's my theory. I was watching old episodes of this. I can't even think of the name of the show, but it was Joe Bob Briggs on TNT, introducing old horror movies, right? Angie and I were watching this on MagFest back in the room, and he was explaining the Friday the 13th series, and he said basically the way the sequels work is you have a movie that does well, so they release a sequel, and the sequel typically does less well. But if it does well enough, they'll release another sequel that will do even less well, and so on and so forth until the sequels don't make enough money to merit making a new one. So typically, it's normal to see a decrease in quality as sequels go on until they disappear. And of course, there's notable exceptions, such as the Friday the 13th series, where number 4 ended up being really, really good, and then 3 was the 3D one, whatever. But that was his explanation of the series sequel archetype. I think that's what's happening with Dark Souls. I mean, it's really the same thing you guys are all thinking right now. It's dollars and cents. 1 was, made money, so they made 2. 2 made money, so they made 3. Look at Assassin's Creed. Dark Souls 3 exists because of the ethics and motivations behind Assassin's Creed. They're one and the same, even if you like that game. Okay, we are going to do one more, actually. Final Fantasy IX, let's get some comfy feelings. Favorite character, favorite party, favorite songs, locations, favorite summons, battles, FMVs, favorite moment. Alright, start at the top. Favorite character's got to be Zidane. You start that game playing as a piece of crap. Zidane is a thief, right? He becomes the hero, but not at the beginning. He's selfishly motivated just like everybody else. Favorite party? I don't know. I couldn't tell you about that. The dual narrative, I think, worked really well. Switching stuff around. I don't think I had any particular favorite party I could tell you. Favorite song, I can tell you absolutely, was this number, Viva... Oh, gosh, what is it now? I printed it out, and I'm learning to play it on the mandolin, because I got a mandolin for Christmas. But the name of it escapes me. Everything else in that game comes down to the play scene, right? Where there's the sword battle, and the queen is watching, and you have to make believe like a stage sword fight. That's my favorite. That's probably my favorite Final Fantasy moment, probably of all time, is that sword battle in Final Fantasy IX. What an awesome moment that was. Oh man, what a game. All right, boys and girls, this is going to be our third and final chip tune of the week. This, as the other two are, this is available at chipmusic.org. You can head over, just look it up, get yourself a copy of the MP3. And I really encourage you guys to do that. If any of these stick with you, I mean, these are from artists who are hungry for ears to hear their music. So get yourself some MP3s and leave some comments for these guys. Tell them you heard their tracks on Tiger Claw Radio. I'm sure they would love to hear it. So this is from Digitex, who's been a mainstay here at TCR. He's had a bunch of music played here, but this was a new track called Pixel Rain. It's a little bit longer, so I saved it for later in the show. We're looking at a runtime of almost 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 41 seconds. But I think this guy's got talent, so I think it carries those 4:41 very well. Anyway, I'll see you on the other side, where we'll do some failbag. That's quality stuff right there, man. It really is. You know, I hate doing this where the podcast goes up on the YouTube page and nothing's gone up all week last week, so it's just two of them next to each other. but I am glad that we're putting in something that's over an hour this week. All right, so this is where I like to take advantage of the fact that the listenership is small and we can really talk to each other and just enjoy hitting each other back and forth. Anything that you put, I mean, if you want to leave a comment, the best place to do it is YouTube. That's really the only place I can guarantee whatever it is going to get read. You can also try thenextround.net. Anywhere where you download the podcast, it is a possibility, but YouTube is clearly the best place. All right, so give me a second here. I'm just doing some quick navigating. All right, we'll start with YouTube. Let's see. All right. Yeah, here we go. Saga writes, do you want to make this Ride and Forward thing official? I got some pretty decent runs on it. Be a nice way to bring back the score challenge if nothing else. Steel Battalion is your mech game. Not as expensive as I thought it was. 500 plus, though it was in the 1K range nowadays. I'm going by memory of what games I saw. Magfest shmup games were Sexy Parodius, Sky Cruiser, Twinkle Star Sprites, Blue Revolver, Death Smiles, Blazing Star, Pulstar, Strikers 19XX, 2 different games. Battle Gregaria, both original and Rev 2016, which is what replaced your Blue Revolver. ESP, Rade, Galuda 1 and 2, Galaga 88, Ibarra, Pink Sweets, Ibarra, Sorakawa, Mushihime-sama, Futari. So you have something to work off of if you want to play any of those again. Taking a quick break from the comment. Awesome that you made that list, dude. This is coming from a guy who's way more knowledgeable about shmups than I am. So when we went there and we looked at these games, he was able to tell me what they were, where I was like, oh man, this looks really sweet. It's got some awesome graphics. Let's play this. Let's get back to his comment. He writes, speaking of Musahime-sama Futari, which is, for my money, the best cave game, it'll probably never come to Steam. So emulate it, or a 360 with an import copy, which really isn't an ideal solution for some. Shmup MAME is preferred, although all versions of MAME have timing issues. Slowdown is different than on actual hardware, which will probably never be fixed. And speaking of MagFest arcade games in general, I was right, kinda. The company that provided the games in the previous years wasn't there. This year was a different company, which would explain the overall better selection. And good to go. Those games you have only you have played. Threads is click and play stuff. Because how many people really played Harry Cars, or even know what Harry Cars is? Or what about Arena? What a stupid game that was. All right, I think this deserves some explanation. Click and Play, for those of you guys who don't remember or don't know, is a program that was used back in the day to make it so that you could create games with some simple object-oriented programming, all done with a point-and-click interface. It was for kids, right? Now, there were many sequels of it, and it eventually evolved into what is now called Multimedia Fusion 2, which I have on Steam. That was originally Click and Play a long time ago. It was a lot simpler. There was less you could do on it, and we used to do it on little teeny tiny monitors. But that was it. So in those days, when Click and Play was the cutting edge of user-created games, we would look up Click and Play websites, which, as a matter of fact, if you looked that up on the internet now, you would probably find some old derelict Click and Play websites, at least on the Wayback Machine. There was a lot of GeoCities Click and Play sites. Well, I wish I could remember what time frame this was. It was, I want to say late 90s, early 2000s. No, earlier than early 2000s. It had to be late 90s. One of my favorite things to do, which I did at his house on his computer, was go to these little tiny sites and download the Click and Play games that just the average people had made. And they were beyond terrible. They were so terrible. Oh my gosh. The stories of Click and Play games. They were bad, but I liked them anyway. Saga and I both made our own Click and Play games. Harry Cars was one that we found and downloaded. It was a top-down kind of game. It had plausible graphics, which was really good for the Click and Play days. And you would drive a little car around, and that was really it. It had 2-player local multi, and by that I mean there was a stationary car somewhere that if you used the right keys, a second person could like hang off of the same keyboard and play it. But there wasn't really a point to it. You just drove the cars around in the city, and they did certain things to try and make this little city feel alive. It was Harry Cars. That's what it was called. And there was a second one at some point. But the thing about that game is it disappeared. It's gone in time. It does not exist in a downloadable form anywhere. So I don't know. I guess it's completely extinct. You know how people say once it's on the internet, you never get it back? Well, this one is gone. Now, my dad had a computer many years ago that he bought. My dad passed away in 1997, and he bought a computer like maybe 6 months before he passed on. So after he passed away, my brother and I ended up using that PC, just like as our home PC. And we didn't have access to the internet, so I would go over to Angie's house with a stack of diskettes. We would get click-and-play games, and I would bring them back to my house on diskettes and load them onto my computer. So I didn't have access to the internet, but I could go to a friend's house and get things off the internet that way. So some of those games that are now extinct exist on my father's old computer at my mom's house, which she won't let anybody touch. One other game that exists on that computer is a game called Arena. And Arena is a game that Enji Baratsu, or Saga here, he made that game when we were kids. It was a top-down shooting game with some really primitive graphics. And he did a really good job for the time, but we were also kids. So if we got it out now, it would look pretty hilarious. So that's something that's going to stay just between us. Out of respect for my old friend. So yeah, that's Click and Play, that's Harry Cars, that's Arena, what all that stuff is. So his answer for games that no one has played but him, probably the best answer anybody could come up with, because truly nobody has played those games. All right, man, that was quite a comment. That was one for the record. So always great to hear from you. Thanks for leaving your 2 cents. Got some from Dumaze here we're going to read. He writes, I flashed my action replay, so now it plays burn games with it. Once it's done, it's called a pseudo-Saturn booter. The one drawback is the other features are erased. No more cheats, no more extra RAM or anything. So it cannot boot any games that need the extra RAM, nor can you use it for backup to save your data. But I bought another clean action replay for these features. Okay, so that's some Sega Saturn knowledge. Game Gear games run on a standard EverDrive. There's an issue, however, because the Game Gear color palette is bigger than the Master System. Some Game Gear games will have screwed up colors. Also, for the record, Sega Master System and Game Gear games on the EverDrive do not support the save states. Alright, good to know. Xbox tank game, Steel Battalion. If you die, it erases your save data too. Hardcore. Finally, Quake did not ship with mouse controls. Quake 2 was the first that did. You had to enable it by modifying the quake.cfg file. Even worse, this did not enable you to look up and down with the mouse either. It took yet another modification to enable full mouse look in the CFG file. Very annoying. But I'm glad I knew how to do it back in the day, as it was way better that way. I played GL Quake, which had the modified 3D engine, so I could use my awesome 12 meg Voodoo 2 3D accelerator with it. Oh man, those are the days, my man. You know, it's funny because I never ever did the CFG modification. What I would do is if you drop down the console with that tilde key, plus mlook, all one word, would enable mouse look. The idea was that every single key that you pressed had a console command to do it. When you would press down on the keyboard, it would be plus whatever that is, and when you lift it up off the keyboard, it would be minus whatever that is, right? So every time you pressed a key, 2 commands were being sent. One to begin doing the action and another one to stop doing the action. So plus mlook was the action of holding down whatever the mouse look button is. So if you would do plus mlook, it would enable mouse look. So I never figured out how to get it to stick on that way. I would just drop down the console every single time I loaded Quake. And after all these years, that's still what I do. That seltzer. So few calories. Let's go back a little bit to this EverDrive stuff he's talking about. Game Gear games running on a standard EverDrive. Dumaze, what's going on with Sega Genesis EverDrives messing up people's hardware? Is that a thing? Is that something the cheap Chinese versions do? or something like that. I seem to remember reading recently that there was a new model of the Sega Genesis EverDrive that screwed up some old hardware. I don't know if that's true or not. This is completely from the internet rumor mill, but you're the authority on Genesis, or excuse me, you're the authority on EverDrives, period, at the moment. So I'm curious to hear what your take on it is. As always, thanks for the comments, man. It's always good to hear from you, and I hope you're doing well. I got one more comment that I'm aware of. Give me a second here. This was posted on an old episode of TCR on the YouTube page. Oh, I got a new one from Bithead 1000. All right. By the way, Bithead 1000 recently made a return to Twitter. He had been off Twitter he opened a Twitter like a couple years ago and had like maybe 1 or 2 posts on it. Well, he's back on there now, trying to trade off his NES games. So if you want to trade with the Bithead, get on Twitter and look him up. All right, so this is a comment that was recently left on Tiger Claw Radio episode 211. So we're looking at a couple months back. I can't remember what was talked about on this one. But looking at the other comments from around that time, Light Studios, good old Sendu, is talking about Jet Force Gemini being one of his favorites. And there you go. So this is from Bristol. I'm so sorry, dude. Please bear with me. As he writes, I left this on the Mondo Cool page, but I don't think it posted. Number 1, as far as the best Star Wars game question goes, I loved Rogue Squadron series on the N64 and GameCube, especially the first 2. The third game introduced on-foot levels that were totally unnecessary, just like Star Fox Assault did on the GameCube. They were way better than the later Jedi Starfighter and Naboo Starfighter games that came out later on. I lament the fact that Factor 5 no longer exists and Rogue Squadron games died with them. I also really enjoyed the PS2 Xbox Battlefront games. Some of my work friends and I, in our bachelor days, spent many alcohol-fueled evenings on multiplayer. Those were great times, at least until one of those guys got frustrated and started team killing with Chewbacca's guided missiles. Number 2, I also played Perfect Dark without the expansion pack several months before I was able to buy it separately. IIRC, it was packed in with Donkey Kong 64, but I never bothered to get that one. If you plan on playing it again, I suggest browsing eBay for the memory card. It's like playing it for the first time all over again. And finally, number 3, he writes, Forsaken was also on the PlayStation. I had the PlayStation demo disc. Back up because I botched that. I had played that on a demo disc I got in PlayStation Magazine. I had never played it on N64 because I did not have the console at the time. And when I did finally get an N64, I was occupied with the more popular games, and I didn't even notice it existed. Yeah, man, you and the rest of the world as well. I gotta say, though, I played my copy, because this has been a month now since this happened. I played my copy of Forsaken on the N64 a couple of times, and it was great that I got it because I needed to get new N64 games. That was something I badly needed. Prior to my return to collecting, I only had maybe 6 games for the N64, and most of them were bad. So it's nice to have something that was actually playable. You fly around the ship, it's not as good as Descent, but it's functional. There's combat, there's fighting. I feel like this is one that's... I know this is a sign of a bad game, but I feel like this is going to be one that's more fun if I could play it in multiplayer with friends. But that's because I like the combat, but I don't like the level design. I think the level design is too confusing. But apart from that, solid game. I only paid, a handful of bucks for it, maybe $5. $5 for a game I got a couple of really good sittings out of on a system I really needed games for. I think I'm all right with that. Also, you mentioned the expansion pack for N64. I really should go back and get that because Perfect Dark was probably, I don't know. I'm inclined to say it was my favorite N64 pickup of recent years, but that's not true because I got Jet Force Gemini back, and that is, mwah. I haven't given that game its due. I bought that and I was really excited to get it, but I got it at the same time as a bunch of other really awesome games, so it unfortunately just got swept under the rug. And I'm glad I read this because that's bringing me back to a game that I could, I'm in a good spot. I could put that in and really have some fun with it. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll play through Jet Force Gemini. I think I need to get a hold of a memory card for the N64. Weren't there certain games that needed a memory card, but then there were also some that saved right on the cartridge? I don't know, guys. N64 was a weird console. There was a lot of really good things about it, but there were some weird things as well. And I'll tell you what, this was our jumbo episode. We made it. So whatever has brought you here to a solid 1 hour and 25 minutes into Tiger Claw Radio, I hope your life is going good. I really do. I want you guys to know that I'm rooting for you. I hope that in your life you're swinging and hitting, and whatever happens, even if you miss, I hope you're getting up in the morning to try again, because that's what it's all about. All right? Have a good week. I'll see you next Monday.